This week on Conflict Zone, the former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan faces what he calls 180 false charges and fears he'll soon be back in jail. But the current government says it will hand over to a caretaker administration in August, paving the way for new elections. So will Khan be able to take part?
The question is, even if I'm in jail, which I think they will sooner or later put me in jail, will they allow the party to contest election? That's the big question.
Khan insists that Pakistan's powerful and unaccountable army is out to get him and is appealing to the world to save the country's democracy. But what kind of democratic record does he have? He was roundly criticised by human rights groups when he was in office. How does he respond now to their charges? And why has he been so soft on the Taliban? Imran Khan, welcome to Conflict Zone.
My pleasure.
The Pakistani government says it will hand over power to a caretaker government August the 14th, paving the way for general elections. If that happens, do you plan to contest those elections?
Oh, most definitely, Tim. We're going to contest the election. Question is, will they allow our party to contest the election? This is the big question right now.
Will they allow you? Because you've got something like 180 serious charges against you, all of which you've denied. Doesn't that disqualify you from taking part? Or might it?
Well, till the age of 70, I didn't have one criminal case. And in the last few months, I have almost 180. But it's just not just that. My entire party leadership is underground or in jail. And about 10,000 of our workers are in jail right now. So there's a total crackdown on my party. So the question is, even if I'm in jail, which I think they will sooner or later put me in jail, will they allow the party to contest election? That's the big question.
And if they don't, you've already suggested that you might start a new party. Is there time for that?
Well, we are speaking to our lawyers. I mean, there's no way they can ban a political party which has over 70% rating, public approval in the country. So we're just working out what are the tactics they'll use to ban the party, and then what options have we got after that?
Do you foresee a peaceful or a violent campaign?
I don't see violence because, elections is something the whole country is waiting for. The vast majority of people are waiting for elections in this country. And so in a way that will let the steam off. But if the other worry is that they might go against the constitution and delay the elections because of fear of losing. On 14th of May this year, the Supreme Court, according to the constitution, had announced the elections of Punjab, which is 60% of Pakistan, but the government refused. So because of fear of losing. So we're still not sure whether they will go ahead with elections.
You've been complaining that democracy is hanging by a thread in Pakistan. Surely one of the main reasons for that is that you have a powerful army that's been pulling the strings since independence in the country and without any public accountability. Why did you never manage to bring it under democratic control?
Well, Tim, Pakistan started off as a security state. We came to being in 47. In 1948, there was a conflict with India. There was enormous amount of insecurity in Pakistan that will we survive as a state with a neighbor, hostile neighbor 7 times the size. So hence the over-reliance on the military began. And almost half the time we were ruled directly by military through various military dictators. And then the rest by these 2 families. So I am really an outsider who came in 2018. So therefore, the army basically is entrenched in our political system. Now, the big question is, how do we now evolve our political system into moving towards a genuine democracy rather than a hybrid system?
You were fine with the army, weren't you, as long as they backed you? You once put it you were on one page when it came to policy decisions. Now that you've fallen out of love with each other. You accuse them of persecution and attempting to kill you, and they've thrown these 180 charges against you. Did you really think you could take on the army and win?
Look, Tim, the situation is evolving. As they say, you only cross the river once, because, as time passes, it no longer is the same sort of Pakistan it was 70 years ago or 20 years ago when General Musharraf imposed a martial law. This is a different Pakistan. In 20 years, we've had a free media. First time you had independent TV channels coming in and a vibrant media. And secondly, we had a movement for the independence of judiciary, which was in 2007 it started. And so our judiciary became fairly independent, whereas previously it was part of the executive. Now the situation in Pakistan is completely different. The acceptability of martial law is just zero in this country now. So what is going on right now is a new equilibrium. How do you now have a system where the elected prime minister has the responsibility, but does he have the authority to implement his program? My 3.5 years in power, I found that we were on the same page. And by the way, army, you mean the army chief, because there's no democracy in the army. So we worked quite well for 3 years. The problem I had was that in the last 6 months, he then decided to he already intrigued with the current prime minister. And to get an extension, he then undermined my government. But the only problem I had with him before that was that I wanted my whole party is called Movement for Justice, bringing the powerful under the law.
When you were pushed out of office by the no confidence vote last year, you could have quietly accepted it. You could have gone into opposition and waited to contest the elections. But when you were arrested last May, you claimed the army chief, Asim Munir, was behind it. They're petrified, you said. They know that we will sweep the elections, so they've been looking for an excuse to put me in jail. You also named a senior officer as trying to have you killed. In a way, you were asking for trouble, weren't you? You must have known that at the time.
Well, firstly, I might, if it was a normal vote of no confidence, I would have accepted it. The problem was that in this case, there was a lot of money, money exchanged hands, and the army chief, intrigued, used the intelligence agencies, to bring our government down. Now, I still would have accepted it, but I had started my politics 27 years ago against these two corrupt families. Both of them have massive corruption cases against them. In fact, Zardari was put into jail by Nawaz Sharif for corruption. The cases against Nawaz Sharif were from Asif Zardari. Both were termed by the military establishment as corrupt. So what I objected was that after all this 27 years of struggle, they were imposing the same crooks on us again. And that's why I went into the public. And by the way, no disruption. I just did public rallies telling the public that, look, this is, we are not sheep. I mean, they cannot impose these crooks on us and expect that, like dumb sheep, we would just accept this injustice. And that's what happened. The people responded. Out of 37 by-elections, my party swept 30 of them, despite the establishment supporting them. Now, that's when they got worried, and that's when they tried to kill me. That was my first assassination attempt.
Something they've denied. Something, of course, which they've denied. Mr. Khan, well, you claim to want democracy in Pakistan, but many of your actions don't seem to bear that out. You rejected the results of the 2013 elections that brought Nawaz Sharif to power. And when his government rebuffed your demand to stand down or hold new elections, you threatened to storm his house. How democratic was that?
Tim, look, in 2013, the elections were rigged. The establishment then joined hands with Nawaz Sharif and rigged the elections. All we asked them was that there were 133 petitions in the about the federal government. We said, just have 4 random ones. just have an audit done, and if there's no rigging, we will accept it. So
look,
they
in
refuse.
August 2014, your activists, alongside those of a hardline Islamist preacher, Tahir al-Qadri, attacked the parliament and other government buildings. At least 3 people were killed and hundreds injured. And you fanned the flames of violence when talks failed. What did that have to do with democracy?
This is not true. Let me tell you exactly what happened. We asked for 4 constituencies to be opened up out of 133 which were challenged. They refused. We did a protest, and we did a protest for 126 days, Tim. Nothing happened except for one day. Nothing happened. These were the most peaceful protests. Our right, just asking them to do a check on the elections. It actually went into the Supreme Court then. But it was never violent. The one night that was violent was, unfortunately, another party also joined us in the protest. And so, something happened one night and there was shelling and so on. But
You
that's
told-
out
you
of
told the crowd-
126 days.
You told the crowd, I'm prepared to die here. You said, I've learned that government plans a major crackdown against us tonight. I'm here till my last breath. It's almost as if you wanted a punch-up.
No. This is right. What are you talking about right now? What's happened? I mean, it's completely different what's happening right now. Or are you talking about 19?
I was talking about 2014. I was talking about 2014, the mob in Islamabad.
I mean, what happened was, I mean, I could go into details. I mean, they tried to disrupt our peaceful protest, and they tried to remove us from there. And then there was tear gas and so on, and trying to scare us away. And so we resisted that. But I mean, the fact is, in my 27 years, I have always urged everyone to remain within the Constitution and exercise our right for peaceful protest. And that's what it was. 126 days. Only one day there was this tear gas shelling, and when there were, sadly, a few casualties, 3 or 4 people died.
Why not control your supporters instead of stoking the violence? What we saw this year, May this year, your arrest by paramilitary troops at the Islamabad High Court. This led to protests and rioting by your supporters across the country, as well as vandalism against military installations. At least 8 people died, probably many more. What did they die for? What did they die for?
A classic case of blame the victim. What happened on the 9th of May? I was sitting inside the Islamabad High Court. There was no warrant against me for arrest. While I was sitting there, filling in the forms, there was an attack by not just rangers, but commandos. Commandos came in, and this is visible everywhere. They came in, they broke through that registry office I was sitting in. They beat up everyone. My lawyers were beaten up. The staff was beaten up. I was hit on my head, and they dragged me out like a criminal. And when these images went out, there was obviously going to be a reaction.
Did you call for calm? Did you call for calm?
Just completing. Bear in mind, the Supreme Court then passed a verdict that my arrest was not arrest, abduction was unconstitutional and unlawful. So I was the victim of this. And the way they treated me and the reaction to that, there was always going to be a reaction. I mean, imagine the head of the biggest party being treated like a terrorist. So there was going to be a reaction. But the question is, who ordered it? Who ordered that unlawful, unconstitutional act?
The question is also the question is also whether you tried to stop it. Mr. Khan, you're often declared commitment.
Tim, hold on. Tim, hold on. I was in jail for 4 days. How was I supposed to stop? I didn't even know what was going on. When they produced me in front of the Supreme Court Chief Justice, that's the first I found out about the violence. And I condemned it immediately.
Mr. Khan, your often declared commitment to democracy doesn't seem to have been appreciated by everybody when you were in power. In 2021, your last full year in office, Human Rights Watch says your government stepped up its efforts to control the media and curtail dissent. Authorities harassed and at times detained journalists and other members of civil society for criticising government officials and policies, it said. Are you proud of that?
I wish they would give me specific incidents. We have investigated. There were 10 incidents of journalists, who claimed that they had been mistreated. 10 incidents. My party was only responsible for one of them, my government, which immediately we remedied. 3 or 4 of them related to the security forces. We were coming out of the war on terror, and they then thought that these guys were overstepping and the troops were vulnerable and so on. Nothing to do with my government. You cannot compare, Tim, what is going on right now. Our best journalists hounded out of the country, murdered. Four of our top journalists have run out of the country. Our other journalist, who is the highest viewership on YouTube, has been abducted for 2 months. His family doesn't know where he is. All media is controlled today. My name is not allowed to be mentioned on television.
Mr. Khan, can we stay with your record?
Not even during martial law, there's such sort of media clampdown.
Can we stay with your record? Because still in 2021, Human Rights Watch said the authorities expanded their use of draconian sedition and counter-terrorism laws to stifle dissent and strictly regulate civil society groups critical of government actions. Authorities also cracked down on members or supporters of opposition political parties. In their view, you ran a pretty nasty government, didn't you? Or did Human Rights Watch just make all this up?
I wish they would give some specific examples, because I can tell you, my time was liberal. Judiciary was never interfered with. The police was never told to victimize people. 10,000 workers of mine are in jail today. Entire senior leadership is in jail. And you name me the number of times the opposition did protest. Not once did we try and stop them. They have never even allowed us to do one peaceful protest. And the draconian crackdown, listen, Tim, this has never happened in our history. People are being picked up in the middle of the night. Houses are broken in. Houses are robbed by the police. The reign of terror right now, even in General Musharraf's martial law, it was liberal compared to what is happening right now.
In 2021, your own Human Rights Commission, Pakistan's own Human Rights Commission, was scathing about what it called your government's deliberate attempts to malign numerous human rights defenders and journalists. The government's increasingly authoritarian tendencies provide, it said, no room for consensus building between the state and civil society. Did they get it wrong as well? Were they making up the stories? Are they biased? What is it?
Tim, look, I never claimed that, there was this nirvana of this great democracy immediately we installed in our 3.5 years. Bear in mind that in the last 60 years, half the time was military dictators and half the time these two families. So my government, this was the first time we were in power. And I can tell you, if you look at our record in terms of victimizing the opponents, 95% of the case against all political opponents were inherited by us, not initiated by us. And merely we were trying to pursue the same cases which we inherited. There was no victimization. The opposition could do any rallies. There were 3 long marches to Islamabad. Not one case was registered against them. There are 180 cases against me, most of them terrorism cases. There are 2 murder cases. There are 2 corruption cases. There are a blasphemy case against me. And in the last 7 months, this has never happened in our history. I'm almost about to break a world record to reach my double century. Every day I wake up, there's another case. And remember, all my senior leadership is in jail or they're in hiding. So, I'm totally isolated today. I can't, the police outside my house, they check anyone who comes inside. In our worst martial law, these sort of things never happen.
Let's talk about some of your attitudes that have excited shall we say, less than enthusiasm by the international community. In August 2021, you welcomed the Taliban's seizure of power in Afghanistan, saying that Afghans had broken the shackles of slavery. Having seen how the women of Afghanistan, far from breaking their shackles, have had them brutally reattached by the Taliban, would you like to revise that opinion, or do you choose just not to see that?
Number one, this was a speech talking about mental colonialism. This was a speech dealing with changing our education syllabus, curriculum, because we still had the old colonial curriculum where the small elite had English medium and the rest had Urdu medium. And there was this big gap between the rich and the poor because of this education. So what I was trying to, it was an Urdu speech in Urdu. I was trying to tell them that we have to break these mental chains of slavery. And basically, I was just referred that in Afghanistan, they've attained their independence. This was made into such a big thing. I mean,
well, you never revised it, did you?
But listen,
you never revised it. I'm giving you a chance to revise your opinion of the Taliban, who whipped and beat women when they demonstrated for their rights. Whipped and beat them.
Firstly, Tim, so let's get the facts right. Against the British in the 19th century, the Afghans got their freedom when the British left. Soviets in 20th century, when they left, they got their freedom. So the US, when they left, they got their freedom. That's how it's just a fact. Now come to Taliban. Look, first of all, whichever government is in power in Afghanistan, Pakistan has to have good relationship with them. I had very good relationship or tried my best with the Ghani government, previous government. I went to Kabul. I invited him as a prime minister. We have a 2,500 kilometer border with Afghanistan. We don't look upon Afghanistan as Taliban government or Ghani government. We look upon them as Afghan government, because if we do not have good relationship with the Afghan government, there are 3 million Afghan refugees living in Pakistan.
So you refuse to condemn their crimes? You refuse to condemn their crimes?
No. First of all, let me just clear so that you understand, whichever government is there, Pakistan should have good relationship with them, because in the previous time, there were 3 terrorist groups operating from Afghan soil into Pakistan. The TTP, ISIL, and then there was the Baloch Liberation Army. So from our point of view, if we have good relationship with the Afghan government, then they will control this cross-border terrorism. That is the main reason. Now you come about Taliban. Look, Taliban must defend themselves, whatever, they should. I'm not their spokesperson.
You have nothing to say about the summary executions or enforced disappearances of more than 100 former Afghan security personnel, the hundreds of people who were evicted from their homes. Your administration said we must strengthen and stabilize the current government for the sake of the people of Afghanistan. Why would you, a self-declared Democrat, want to strengthen a government that was and still is repressing and brutalizing so many people in Afghanistan? That's what people in the West find difficult to understand.
Tim, first of all, as the Prime Minister of the country, my top priority is people of Pakistan. What is good for them? What is good for our people is peace in Afghanistan. There's been 40 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And whenever there's this conflict in Afghanistan, it spills over into Pakistan's tribal areas. And so we then face destabilization in the northwestern border. So therefore, I mean, it's not up to me to start moralizing about other countries.
Why not? You don't have any principles?
No, there are principles. But, when you talk about foreign policy of a country, and let me tell you, the Western countries right now, our democracy is being dismantled in front of their eyes. Is there one statement against it? I mean, they talk about when something happens in Hong Kong, they blame China for being anti-democratic, or Russia, or Uyghurs in China.
About which you've said nothing. About which you've said nothing.
Is there any statement against Pakistan dismantling of our democracy? Up 10,000 people in jail, the sort of victimization going on, and total clampdown on media. So is there any statement by anyone? Because it's not in their interest. So the countries, the Western countries, look to their own interests. In Kashmir, there is total violation of human rights. Is there any condemnation? No, because India is a strategic ally, a bulwark against China. So don't ask countries like us, who have 100 million vulnerable people in this country, 50 million below the poverty line, 50 million just above it. This is our priority. So they used to ask me, give statement against Uyghurs about China doing of the Ukraine-Russian conflict. We can't afford these moral statements because our statements could affect people going below the poverty line in this country.
All right.
So I'm, as a prime minister, this was my priority rather than talk against all the wrongs being done in this world.
All right, Imran Khan, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
My pleasure, Tim. Thank you.